So moving on next, the Hasbro gave an investor's preview at Toy Fair and brought up a lot of interesting information in different areas. One of the first things being is that after this Bumblebee movie, uh, they are going to be rebooting the Transformers cinematic universe. It is going to end with this Bumblebee movie, which is an interesting.
Way to go about it.
Yeah, it's good to use something that is essentially number one. It changes the narrative of what we thought initially from John Cena, where he said that this was a reboot. So now we know this isn't a reboot, the Bumblebee movie. It's going to be the last movie of that cinematic universe. What's interesting about that, though, is because number one, it's a prequel movie, so we're not exactly tying up loose ends with a prequel
Yeah.
movie, unless somehow this prequel movie, in the epilogue of it, covers stuff after the fact. But that being said, it's interesting because a couple of years ago we were shown a timeline that Hasbro showed us of the plans for, like, we're going to have a Bumblebee movie, then Transformers 6, then another standalone movie, then Transformers 7. Like that was kind of like their long-term plans and stuff of this ongoing cinematic universe. And then of course this is when the Hasbro United Cinematic Universe with all the other events was still a thing, which isn't anymore
Yep.
also.
They pared it way back down.
So yeah, so essentially what this tells us is Transformers 6 number 1, which was going to be a sequel to whatever the name would have been for the sequel to The Last Night, is gone now. That's not going to happen, which is interesting because we were kind of left on a cliffhanger in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Here's Unicron, here's Quintessa in human form, left on it. That's a big cliffhanger to leave on, and the fact that they're never going to revisit it, and
Do they ever revisit cliffhangers that they do?
yeah, I guess not. I don't know. I mean, that's something only the IDW comics could have filled in at this point. So that's the first thing. The second thing is they talk about their new movie slate now that we know. And essentially, what it's going to be is we have the Transformers Bumblebee movie that's going to be in the Christmas season of 2018. And then the funny thing is they go, okay, in 2020, we have a G.I. Joe movie. Also in 2020, we're going to have a Micronauts movie that's still trucking forward. In 2021, they're going to have a Dungeons and Dragons movie, and then Paramount Hasbro event film. So they're still probably planning some kind of event movie. What's interesting about this movie slate is it shows that in 2019, 20, and 21, there's no sign of a Transformer movie.
Mm.
Does this mean that the cinematic universe is not only ending, but they're going to be taking a break for a while before they get back around to um, doing a new cinematic universe, this new reboot that they're speaking of? Do they
I
want to
think
first? Do they want to, like, try these other brands in the meantime? It's interesting.
I kind of feel like they're taking a bit of a break and then kind of letting it air out a little bit. I could see maybe in 2021 that it's going to be like a complete crossover film,
I think that
or maybe they might do something really random and be like Monopoly with
one
Transformers
thing
or something really
one
out of
thing
there.
that I think what it could be. This is just my own assumption, is that
It could
um,
be that Clue movie that they announced
what
with Ryan
what
Reynolds.
I think what it could be. One possibility is, so we have the Bumblebee movie. It ends the cinematic universe from the base cinematic universe that we've been used to up to this point.
Hmm.
Then we live 3 years in our time of a world with no Transformers, where we're gonna have the GI Joe movie, like no Transformer movie. We're gonna have a GI Joe movie. We're gonna have a Micronauts movie. We're gonna have a Dungeons and Dragons movie, and it's gonna build. They're hoping, I guess, to build those brands, and then when they do this Paramount Hasbro event film that they want to have together, this will be the one where they introduce the new Transformers in this
Yeah.
event movie. If you use G.I. Joe as a vehicle to introduce your new Transformer brand, it's kind of like how G.I. Joe was used to introduce G2 in a lot of ways. You
Mm.
couldn't know how Megatron became G2 Megatron unless you bought those G.I. Joe issues. So I think that, like, what they could really do is they're going to use it as a vehicle. Like it's just they're like, okay, we couldn't get GI Joe to function on its own as a standalone. We couldn't get, maybe they're scared that Micronauts won't be able to stand on its own, from a fan. So watch the GI Joe movie, watch the Micronauts movie, and you're going to get those little seeds leading into this new Transformer continuity, this new hopefully visually different. That's what I'm hoping for. Number one, meaning like new, like
Right.
designs that we aren't familiar with, that we normally see with the Bayverse, like. And then a new writing style, new character, like a. I mean, the one thing that scares me, like, is like, are we still going to have that Bumblebee looking like that Bumblebee? Like, I really hope
Uh,
that everything is a fresh take again. So I think that's what that Paramount event film is. Is I think that they're going to use Transformers as a vehicle to get everyone else over on these other brands, and by not having Transformers for those 3 years in movie form, it'll force people to have to watch. It's the same thing. Transformers was absent in the comic book world when in between Generation 1 and Generation 2, and the only way you got your
mm,
Transformer fix was, oh my god, here's these GI Joe comics, and they're building a tank Megatron.
yeah.
Like that was how you got your fix. And then when by the time those books were done, their little mini series run of it, not a mini series, but when those issues of GI Joe were done doing that little Transformer story, the G2 book rolled out, and then all of a sudden
Uh,
now you had everything going on there. So I think
like
that,
I can also see like maybe in GI Joe, like you just said, they're building a tank that can transform, and then
or
in Micronauts, that's where you're gonna get like maybe mini cons or something, and then in Dungeons and Dragons, they might be alluding to beast bots or something, and
well,
then boom, it all culminates in Transformers or
it's
something. I don't know.
totally exactly like what you just said. That's how I see it, is like GI
Just
Joe.
building on off what you suggested off of
What I almost
the
see it
Marvel
like, I
comics.
see it like, and again, this is pulling actually from stuff that has been done before with Transformers. Is I could see the GI Joe movie, and then maybe the after credits scene, you find out Cobra has Megatron's head, in the
Yeah,
basement. Again, pulling from like a Derek Wyatt, or maybe from even the IDW, the Dreamwave GI
or
Joe
the
stuff.
first
You
the
know, we
first movie too.
we go to Micronauts, and then we find out that their powers and stuff to use mass shifting. Maybe they encountered Soundwave or something, or who knows. When we go into Dungeons and Dragons, maybe because that's a medieval
They
story,
encounter Perceptor.
or yeah, or they encounter Perceptor.
The Micronauts encounter Perceptor.
Exactly. And with Dungeons and Dragons, you encounter a let's say maybe a medieval story, and that's what you go to, what was almost what happening with the Last Night, where it could be ancient times and dragons and beast spots instead, because there's less vehicle based stuff there. You would have more stuff
You
like
get Insecticons or something.
Insecticons, or horses, or dragons, or maybe even something that turns into a catapult, or I don't know, or a battering ram, but something that's more
Dinobots maybe.
or
I don't
dino,
know.
yeah, something more simplistic and more primal, using that, and then all of that leading to whatever. That's just one way to do it. I mean, I'm not saying that's what it's going to be. It's just more, that's how I kind of see how it could be done. I mean, aside from that, I mean, that's what was pretty much announced when it came to the cinematic universe and moving forward for the next 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. I wish them the best of luck, and I hope they don't get those big stumbling blocks like the Universal Dark series where they're trying to do all the monsters stuff together
Mm.
and it's just failing miserably. So best of luck, Hasbro Paramount. We were counting on you, we really are.